And there's not a whole lot online about it, not in comparison with a lot of the other Lamiaceae family plants, but it's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good one. It grows very easily in your garden here. Okay, so that's an R. Brand new pen for y'all. I'm so generous. All right. Ah! Good morning. And look, it stayed. These are such awesome cups. I got these at Habitat for Humanity, at the Habitat for Humanity store. And $1 each. It goes to, the money goes to good things, and it doesn't break when you throw it on the floor. Sorry about that, folks online. All right. So,
What else is in this family? Malvaceae?
Malvaceae. So that's the mallow family. So what do you think would be in this family? There you go. Also in this family, okra.
Gross.
What used to be in this family? Cacao.
Oh,
I know.
but no longer.
Yeah, they decided to throw it in a different family. It's in a subfamily. Good morning.
Morning.
All righty, so here's your gorgeous tea for the day. I'm sorry, usually I give you options in your cups. Some people like different kinds of cups, but you know what? You all get the fancy cups today.
Oh, I like the fancy.
I know, fancy cups are fancy. Would you like a little table?
Oh, well, yeah, if it's convenient.
That's
Otherwise,
right
I'm
here.
not really sure.
I'll just stick it right there and take the...
Perfect.
All right. Just throw the pen right there. See the little bit. All right. What? I know our prior cacao relationship. Exactly. Well, you know, taxonomists, they're always messing around with our plants and throwing them in different families. Okay, let me get my hair back. I'm sorry. I should get myself together before I do this. Alrighty, so people online and people here, we're going to do lemongrass. You can storm out of the place because we're not doing lemongrass. We're doing hibiscus. Same energetics. So, so smell, our usual thing. Inhale some of the steam coming up from there. Are there aromatic things in there that you think might be either therapeutic when you breathe in the steam or give you any hints as to the chemistry of the plant? What does it smell like?
It smells like collard greens.
It smells like collard greens.
Yeah. And it also smells medicinal.
Mm-hmm.
Like it gives that upper medicine smell.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm getting like bamboo shoots.
We're getting bamboo shoots.
Yeah.
Bamboo shoots and collard greens. I have never thought about those. It does.
It has a cooked spinach.
Cooked spinach.
Oh,
Yeah, that's it.
It is, yeah.
The cooked spinach.
Yeah.
It's got a little funky smell to it, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we generally don't consider hibiscus to be an aromatic plant, right? But aromatics come in a lot of different ways, and it's not just plants that secrete volatile oils from their oil glands that are aromatic. You get fragrances from all sorts of things. Good morning, Trisha. I know they're always changing.
Right, spinach.
Good morning, Irene and Camille and Kelly. Hi, Kelly. And Rosalba. Good morning.
Real similar, you with that. Because you made me feel like Colleagues.
She's setting you off on the greens road. Yeah, it's all your fault.
And it does. It's closer to
You
it's the
instigator.
spinach, but it was just like, wait.
But yeah, it's that. Yeah, which is curious because there's like no greens in here. There's like nothing green in here.
Right.
It's kind of as far away from greens as you can get, but that fragrance is there because plant chemistry is very complex and lots of stuff going on there. So take it into your mouth, taste it, see if the taste compares with the with the flavor. Does the taste compare with the flavor or the scent? And then what taste do you taste? And then is there a change in the tissue of your mouth when the herb comes in contact with the tissues? How does it change the tissues in your mouth? And I actually did let the tea cool down a little bit so it doesn't change the tissues in your mouth by burning the hell out of them this time. You have a very perplexed look on your
I don't know
face.
what's going on. Something's tingling.
Something's...
A little bit.
And it does feel like I just ate a spoonful of raw spinach.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has that taste. Also tastes sour.
Yeah, sour, that is definitely one of the main things. So I'm going to throw that spinach on there because that keeps on coming up sour.
Tastes like barnyard at first, though.
Barnyard.
It does.
Really?
That taste. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things going on in a barnyard. Yeah. It's like,
That
can
smell.
you like narrow that down a little bit
Right.
more? Good morning.
Okay, so you walk into a farm that the barn, they always have like a similar smell, and if you could take that smell and put it into a taste, that's what it tastes like.
Like, hey,
Wow. Hey. Yeah, okay.
Hay, poop,
Hay?
everything, it's all of it mixed together. Smell.
Hay is better. I was
Pungent,
thinking like
pungent.
pig shit and
Exactly.
chickens and...
Yes, yeah, all that stuff. That's exactly what it tastes like.
There you go. You're welcome.
There's kind of
And there's
like
a monograph
medium
here
to
and
dry.
a journal if you want to take some notes.
Into the
You're welcome.
palate, to the mouth. There's kind of like a medium dry, not so much,
Uh-huh.
but
That drying in the
on
mouth?
tongue and yeah,
Yeah. So you feel that kind of drying effect in the mouth?
so that lets you know it's diuretic.
Mm-hmm. So what is that effect when it's drying the mouth? What's going on? What is that?
Astringent.
It's astringent. Yeah. The action is astringent, which is very different from what we usually get from mallow families, right? What are mallow family plants known for? For being juicy, for being demulcent. Yeah. But we're not using the typical part of the plant in hibiscus, in jamaica, sorrel, whatever name you like to call it. We are using the calyx of the plant, the structure underneath the flower. So you have a flower, and then you have that. Generally, it's green right underneath, right? The sepals there, and that's the structure of a flower. With the hibiscus, this is a red calyx, forms a white flower. The flower dies back, and the calyx then changes into what will become a seed pod. In fact, it will be the fruit of the plant. So it turns into the fruit, and before it produces too many fruits, we're harvesting that calyx. So the calyx doesn't carry a lot of the mucilage that generally you would tend to see. It's one of the things that we think of with the mallow family is marshmallow. Have any of you had marshmallow before? Not marshmallows, but the marshmallow herb, right, is super slimy and slippery. And so most plants like this family, like the okra, generally tend to be super slippery, really demulcent. They're bringing moisture into the body. They feel really slippery on the mouth. They don't make your mouth feel astringent. They make your mouth feel moistened, right? So it is a curious thing about a mallow family plant giving you that astringency, but it's because we're using a different part of the plant. Kelly says the Hmong farmers grow this for the leaves they call sour leaf. At the end of the leafy green season, they'll bring in the whole plant with the calyx. Oh, very cool, Kelly. Thank you. Saida, good morning. Hibiscus carne asada tacos. Yeah, hibiscus, the fruit. The fruit is quite often used as a vegan... This is the leftover calyces, right? You're still in France, are you? What are you doing having tacos in France, Kathy? Also, hello. So this is the calyx. And you can see actually how much color was extracted from the extraction, from the tea making. But they are quite often used as a vegan meat substitute because they're just kind of chewy and not even as a meat substitute. That's not correct because vegans are always looking for what can I do instead of meat. It's just used in vegan tacos because they're really delicious and chewy and yummy and nourishing and beautiful. And when you eat them like that, you do get a little bit more of this sense of the mucilage, but not a whole lot. All right, so sour, barnyard, spinach. Other flavors?
I get a little berry.
A little berry.
It is like if you were an alcohol drinker, you could substitute this for red wine.
Yeah, that wine. Yeah, very interesting that you should say that. Yep, absolutely. Winey without being alcoholic. Yeah. I'm really susceptible to the flavor descriptions, and now I'm getting the barnyard thing.
It's because of wine. We have to do that with wine in our job, and that's just one of like the classic.
Oh, is that a wine descriptor? Is that barnyard? And that's funky.
Yeah.
You wine people come up with the weirdest terms.
I agree.
Actually, the weirdest term we've ever had in this class was someone was tasting something. So a couple years ago, they said that it tasted like when you're swimming in a pool and the water splashes onto the concrete and it kind of dries and you get that smell of the water on the concrete is what it tasted like.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and everyone's like, well, I know that smell. Everyone knows that smell. It's kind of that chlorine-y, Yeah. That person should become a sommelier.
Seriously.
Julie, what's the difference between astringent and tannin?
So astringent is the action. This is the action that whatever chemicals are in there are having an effect on the tissues. So we haven't talked about that a lot. So this is a good one to talk about. So astringents, the chemistry of astringency are the flavonoids. The most common flavonoid associated with astringency is tannins. It's more, all of the flavonoids give that tissue integrity, right? That's one of the things that we know about flavonoids is they make tissues stronger and healthier and more elastic. The tannins are a condensed flavonoid. They're a concentrated flavonoid. And what they do is when you have tissue, that's the surface of your mouth, mucous membranes of your mouth. We have tannins that come in contact with that tissue in your mouth, and they cause a constriction of those proteins, because that's what tannins do, is they grab onto stuff, right? They grab onto things, and one of the things that they grab onto are proteins. They're just really super grabby molecules. So they're going to grab onto proteins, and when they bind to the proteins, they cause the proteins to become thicker. And in that thickening of the proteins, those proteins become less of a permeable membrane, more of an impermeable membrane, so we stop fluid movement between the membranes, right? So if you take tannins and you apply them to a wound, a bleeding wound, they're going to stop the bleeding of that wound. If we put it on, good morning, if we put it on our pits because we're sweaty, they're going to stop the sweat. If we put them on skin that is really oily, they're going to stop the oil production. Let me get you some tea. You can have a seat right there. So that's what astringents do. They're going to be grabbing onto proteins, and making them less of a permeable membrane. So that's beneficial if we want to limit fluid movement there. Also pathogen movement. Pathogens can't move through a thicker membrane, right? And that's what we're feeling in the mouth. We are feeling the chemical reaction between the tannins and the proteins in our mouth. And that's going to happen all throughout the body. We can feel it in the mouth, but everywhere in the body we're going to have that increased tone of the tissues. And so that is in the structural spectrum in your journal. Right up there, there are two papers that you can grab. Sorry. One of them is a monograph that talks about the plant, and the other one is a little herb journal there. So structural plants have an effect on the structures of our body. They can relax the structures, allowing more fluid to go through. Very relaxed tissue in the body is tissue that just is leaky. It's just leaking fluids all over the place. People are bleeding, or there's blood leaking through vascular walls. They're salivating, and tissue is just not able to hold the structure, right? That can sometimes be really beneficial because sometimes tissue is too toned, right? Sometimes tissue is too tight and we want it relaxed. Sometimes tissue is too lax and we want it toned, right? So different tissues, we're going to seek that increased tone of the structure in various different ways or in various different situations. So when we feel that astringency, we know that that is a plant that is rich in flavonoids, probably tannins, but other ones do that too, and it's going to be increasing the tone in our body. It's going to be structurally tonifying. So in your herb journal, that's where you'd want to put that, is that this is a plant that is increasing the tone and the health of the structure in the body. Now, sometimes that can feel locally like it is drying up the tissues, right? We feel that kind of dryness in the mouth whenever we have plants that are really, really tannic. If we have wines that are really tannic, or if we have black tea or green tea, any teas that are rich in tannins, it'll feel high. They'll feel toned, they're tightened. And so we can feel a dryness of the tissues there, and we can tend to think that that is a plant that is drying to the body. Well, it may be, it may not be. We know that it's drying locally to that area. So where we're applying it, it is drying that area locally. But if we think about what's happening on the other side of these tissues, so if we have lax tissues, boom, 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 they're open, and we have fluid down here. If we have fluid down here, the fluid is able to move through lax tissues pretty readily, right? And it's not able to move through toned tissues. So here, there's going to be dryness. Here, there's going to be dampness on the outside of the tissue, yes? On the underside of the tissue, what's going to be happening to the inner tissue in the astringed tissue? We're going to be maintaining moisture underneath here. We're going to be losing moisture here, right? When we have a sialagogue, a plant that increases saliva production, our mouth is just filled with moisture. It's all juicy. But the underlying tissues, where's that juice coming from? It's coming from the body. The net effect on the body is a dryness because we're losing fluid through that. It feels moistening, and we're moistening that local area, but the net effect on the body is a drying effect. The local effect is drying, but we are retaining fluids. We're closing the gates, right? And the most common place that we can see this is in fluid loss and diarrhea, right? So the primary issue with diarrhea is that we're going to have dehydration. So one of the primary things that we need to do is keep that moisture in there. And one of the primary ways that we deal with stopping that fluid loss is by use of astringent plants to astringe and tighten those mucous membranes so that we don't have that fluid loss. Does that make sense? Is anyone going, what?
So the astringency is the action of the tannin.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Astringency is the action of the flavonoids and the tannins. Yes. And flavonoids is a big family of compounds, we talk about flavonoids all the time because they're super common in plants. Plants are where we get flavonoids. Flavonoids are a lot of the pigments in plants. And here, this is a plant that is all about flavonoids. Flavonoids are what we're going to be talking about today. And flavonoids have a couple of different effects in the body. Whenever you see the word flavonoid, you know that a couple of different things are happening. What are they? I just named one of them.
Anti-inflammatory.
Anti-inflammatory. Flavonoids are always anti-inflammatory, and they're anti-inflammatory through a couple of different mechanisms. They are anti-inflammatory because of that increase in tissue stability. Tissue that is strong and healthy and elastic is not going to respond to inflammatory triggers in the body as readily, right? There might be inflammation. If you have a wound, you want inflammation in that wound. The inflammation is the first response of the immune system. Inflammation saves our lives all the time. We want local inflammation, but we don't want it to spread throughout the body. If we have a bug bite, if we have a mosquito bite, there's going to be some inflammation there, absolutely. But when the bug bite turns into this big, huge raised welt, right? That's inflammation out of bounds. That's tissue that lacks a lot of resilience and elasticity and health, and so that inflammation is moving wider through the tissues. Does that make sense? If those tissues are strong and healthy, you would absolutely get the itchy bug bite because that is what happens with the bug bite, but it would be more local. Right? And so same thing if you have a wound and the whole thing just kind of inflames. Oh, dude, you need to strengthen your tissues, right? There should be some inflammation there, but just around that area. So flavonoids are anti-inflammatory in that they increase the resilience and the health of the tissues and stop that. But also, many of the flavonoids are anti-inflammatory in that they are actually reducing the production of those inflammatory chemicals, what we call cytokines, the cell signaling compounds that say, hey, inflame, hey, everyone, come over here and pay attention to this wound right here. We have a break in the tissue and we need immune cells to come in. We need to bring fluids in here. We need to wall this place off. We need to stop the whatever might be coming in through that breach. We want to wall it off. So we're bringing in all of those fluids. We're diluting the compounds. There's a whole bunch of chemistry behind that. So many of the flavonoids are also kind of dampening down those pro-inflammatory chemicals that the body is producing. So two different ways that it's anti-inflammatory. Strengthening the tissues, reducing those inflammatory compounds in the body. Absolutely. Second thing that we know about flavonoids. Oh, and if Kaya Tirsa, gross inflammation of something like a mosquito bite doesn't necessarily indicate an allergic reaction. No. Okay, this is not hibiscus, but it's really, really cool. When you have a mosquito bite, a mosquito has two tubes that it inserts into your body. Mosquito, I'm not going to draw a mosquito because I can't draw, but it has two little tubes. It's when it bites you, these two little tubes come into the body, and there's two things that happen. One of the things that is excreted going into the body is an anticoagulant. It produces an anticoagulant because blood clots. And you don't want this. Number one, all mosquitoes that bite us are mamas that are feeding their babies. They're always mamas that are feeding the babies. Male mosquitoes are gentle, loving. They're pollinators. They're adorable. It's the mamas that are sucking our blood, but they're doing it to feed their babies. So she secretes an anticoagulant compound to thin the blood, to make sure that she can suck all your blood that she wants. That's what we react to. So no, Tirsa, it's not an allergic reaction. It's a reaction to the presence of an anticoagulant. And then the second tube is sucking. So this is going down, and this one is going up. Isn't that cool? It's a very, very clever mechanism that they came up with there. Kendra, hi, honey. My niece is there. So no, it's a really great question. I'm glad you asked that, even though it has nothing. But it's not allergic reaction. But if you are having that a huge response, it does show that that there is maybe some tissue strengthening that wants to happen, and there might also be an allergic reaction, but it's not only an allergic reaction. All right.
Are there,
Thermals.
Is there silica in it?
No,
No.
not to any appreciable amount. Thermal effects. So plants have an effect on the structure of the body. Oh, we didn't do the third one. Sorry, got to do the third one. So, oh, we didn't even do the second one. Sorry, Tirsa, it's her fault. She got me all distracted. So anti-inflammatory flavonoids also increase tissue stability. So we were talking about first, right? Strengthening his tissues, reducing inflammation, strengthening tissues, and they're also antioxidant. They reduce oxidative stress in the body. And that has a lot of different effects, and we'll go into those in just a little bit. How am I? I'm wasting not too much time. All right, so whenever you see flavonoids, whatever flavonoids, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different flavonoids, but they are going to be doing this in some way in the body, irrespective of which flavonoids are there. All right, so now energetics. Cynthia, you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Alicia, yes.
Tell me again the difference between tissue stability and anti-inflammatory towards the tissues.
So tissue stability is an anti-inflammatory action.
Okay.
So you can have an anti-inflammatory effect by strengthening tissues. You can have an anti-inflammatory effect by reducing production of pro-inflammatory compounds in the body.
That's what it was.
Yes,
Okay.
and they do both.
Yeah.
Thermal, yes, thermal effect in this plant. Does this feel like a plant that is warming your body up or cooling your body down, or is there no change? Cooling? You feel cooling? Yeah, cooling. Yeah. Does anyone feel warming from it? Yeah. It is cooling. No. So here's an interesting thing. In Western herbalism, which is the kind I teach because this is where I hang out. In Western herbalism, the sour flavor is always considered cooling. And when we look at the things that we choose, when we're overheated, we choose Jamaica, we choose lemongrass, we choose lemonade, we choose melon or fruit. We choose things that are sour when we are overheated because they increase tissue stability, they reduce heat in the body. In Ayurvedic medicine, the sour flavor is considered heating. Yeah. If you take a lemon and squeeze it into a cut, it's going to burn the cut. Sour flavor is acidic, and the stomach is acidic, and the acid in the stomach is a hot, the digestive process is a hot process. So there's different ways of looking at the chemistry of the sour flavor. I'm a Western herbalist. I'm not an Ayurvedic herbalist, and for me, sour is absolutely cooling to the body, and I'm perplexed by that. But in regard to tissue instability, so tissue instability, was due to allergy, and it could be due to allergy, but in the absence of allergy, it is, and even in the presence of allergy, it can be also tissue stability, right? There's a lot of different things going on. So Tirsa was saying, she meant in regard to tissue instability, I thought the massive swelling was due to allergy and had no idea it was because of weak tissue. So lots of different things can be happening there. But for those people who every single time there's a breach in the tissue, it all inflames. Yeah. If it's only one thing that causes that inflammation, it's much more likely to be an allergy. Yeah. Okay. So it is absolutely cooling. Definitely cooling. The third area, so it is tissue. It is tonifying to tissues. It is cooling the thermal spectrum. The third spectrum that we look at is the fluid spectrum. How do the fluids in your body respond to this plant? Is this a plant that is bringing more moisture into your body? Is it a plant that is making you feel like pretty soon you're just going to have to go pee because it's moving fluids and clearing them out of the body? How does that feel? Does it feel like it's drying your body or moistening your body, or you're not really sure about that?
Drying.
Drying? Okay. Yeah?
Feels dry. I feel like later I'm gonna want water.
Yeah. And that's a really good indicator. Yeah, if you're like, I could use some moisture after I'm taking this. This is a diuretic. It's moving fluids in your body, and those fluids are going to move into your kidneys, and you're going to be peeing them out again. If you drink a whole bunch of just hibiscus by itself, that is going to ultimately have a little bit of a drying effect in your body. And so that can be super valuable if you are dealing with a lot of fluid retention, edema, high blood pressure. And we'll go into hibiscus is one of my favorite plants for working with high blood pressure, especially high blood pressure that is responsive to diuretics. There's a lot of different reasons for high blood pressure, but hibiscus is good for almost all of them. It's one of the first things you want to think of for blood pressure. But yeah, it's absolutely diuretic. So for people who are holding on to a lot of fluids, that's going to be super, super nice. For people who are very, very dry already, who have a constitution that's just really, really dry, that's going to be something that you want to be mindful of. If you're drinking strong hibiscus tea all the time, trying to get moisture into your body, and you're feeling still like when you blink your eyes are going and your sinuses are all dry and all of your mucosal tissues are dry, you need to modify the drying effect of your plant. And truthfully, most of the medicinal herbs are drying. Most of the medicinal herbs do tend to move fluids out of your body, and so generally you need to modify that. Bless you. Yes.
So is this one that is also good for bedwetters?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. Yeah. I'll go into that if we have time, because there's complexity to that question, that it could be, but it could also be problematic. Think about giving a bedwetter a cup of hibiscus tea right before they go to bed, and if it's diuretic, you're moving more fluid into the bladder, and yeah. So, however, giving it earlier in the day, if you give it to them with lunch and sort of move the fluids earlier in the day and get it out, and then maybe start limiting fluids when they go to bed at night, that could be helpful. But there's more going on with a child bed or with a younger bedwetter in terms of just making sure that the bladder muscles are mature to the point where they're supposed to. There's not necessarily a pathology in bedwetting. It's just sometimes you just have to wait until that part of the body learns that.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes it can be. I'm sorry, people, I don't mean to be ignoring you. Diabetics. Kiana asked for diabetics. This is an awesome plant for diabetics, and we'll go into that in just a little bit. All right, so it is cooling, it is drying, and structurally it is tonifying. So those are the three different areas of energetics that we want to look at. Those are the energetics of the plant. So the chemistry of the plant then, lots of flavonoids. And flavonoids, the particular flavonoid that's in here, what is the particular flavonoid in here? The color's the hint. Anthocyanins. Anthocyanins. This is the primary chemistry of hibiscus. The anthocyanins, the pigment, the red pigment that's in here. Very common red pigment. We see it in most things that are red, blue, or purple. So most berries, roses, many fruits and vegetables, red cabbage, blueberries, and hibiscus are anthocyanins. So anthocyanins are a flavonoid, right? So they are chemically related to the tannins. They are a flavonoid. And so they have an affinity for tissues. They're going to be strengthening tissues. The particular tissues that anthocyanins really, really like are vascular walls, blood vessel walls. So anthocyanins are helpful for strengthening tissues throughout the body, but they really, really love blood vessels. They really love to strengthen those blood vessels. So one of the primary indications for the use of hibiscus or any kind of anthocyanin-rich plant is what we call vascular insufficiency, blood vessels that cannot hold the blood inside the system. So people who bruise very easily, you bump against something and all of a sudden, or you're always looking down and going, well, I don't even remember what I did to have this big, huge bruise here. Or bruises that don't resolve very quickly. If you get a bruise, it should be able to, you repair the blood vessels, the body clears all of the waste products out of there, and it's gone. Varicose veins and hemorrhoid veins, yes.
Is that why it has the red color? Because it works with the blood?
So that is a really great question. That brings up the doctrine of signatures. The doctrine of signatures in plants. I have so much to say about the doctrine of signatures, and I totally do not want to get down that path. Many herbalists really love exactly that. That sometimes you can look at a chemical in a plant or in a plant and say, hey, I can tell what that plant is good for by what it looks like. Anthocyanins are red. Blood is red. They help to strengthen blood vessel walls. That's a great mnemonic device, right? A way that we can remember what it's used for. The problem that I have with that is that it centers humans as the reason for the plant's chemistry. And that's a icky, slippery slope, because that says that the plants are growing in service to us. And that puts a hierarchy there that I don't like, right? So, we certainly can use that. It's red, our blood is red, it's strengthening the blood, oh, that's great. We can use doctrine of signatures. We just want to be super aware of when we're using doctrine of signatures to say, hey, plant, thank you for making this chemical that strengthens my blood vessels. Isn't it really cool that you're red and my blood is red? But not, you created that for my red blood. Because there are lots of other organisms in the world that find anthocyanins beneficial, that don't make red blood. That, again, it's that hierarchy of we're only there in service to whatever it is that has the organs that we are associating that plant with, right? Plants that look like brains are really good for brains. Well, there's a whole bunch of other living organisms in the world that don't have brains as such. Does that mean that the plant doesn't like them? It's only prioritizing things with brains? Those are questions to ask yourself. When you start to work with plants in that way, that's all I'm going to say about that, because seriously, I don't, that's my answer there. All right, but anthocyanins, having that red color, totally you can use that as a mnemonic device, as a memory. So anthocyanins strengthen blood vessel walls. We use them to keep blood in its channels. And so for varicose veins, hemorrhoids, spider veins, poor circulation, and also cardiac health and strength. And then Kiana asked about diabetics. In diabetics, type 2 and type 1, what we have is quite often an elevation of insulin in the extracellular fluid and circulating in the body. In type 2 diabetes, we have a pancreas that is producing insulin, but we have insulin that is not able to enter into the cells because the cells have become insulin resistant. So we have elevated levels of insulin, extracellular insulin. In type 1 diabetes, we have a pancreas that is not producing insulin at all, so we have to take oral or injectable insulin. We still have extracellular insulin circulating in the body. Insulin outside of the cell causes pretty severe vascular damage and nerve damage. This is why long-term effects of diabetes are always circulatory and nerve damage. We have poor circulation to the extremities. We have poor circulation to the kidneys. We have nerve damage, neuropathy, slow healing wounds, decubitus ulcers, gangrene, blindness, kidney malfunction. All of that has to do with the insulin causing damage to those vascular walls and to those nerves. So I love, Kiana, that you brought up the diabetes, because that is a major, major issue with diabetics. There's always going to be ultimately vascular issues involved. So anyone with diabetes should be drinking lots of anthocyanin rich or eating anthocyanin rich plants. Look for those red, blue, purple colored plants and just eating them in every way that you can. Hibiscus is a super good one to use for that because it's so concentrated. But any of them, they're all good. Let me get back to that, okay? So I'll get to dosage just because there's other things that I want to talk about, and I want to make sure that we are doing that. I do have. Oh no, I don't. Never mind. Oxidative. So anthocyanins strengthen blood vessels. Also has a very rich amount of organic acids. Organic acids, so that's that sour flavor that we're tasting. So we have ascorbic acid, malic acid, citric acid, hibiscic acid, lots of these organic acids in there, and that gives a lot of the cooling anti-inflammatory effects. Those also seem to have a really positive effect on uric acid. Uric acid in the body. What's uric acid associated with? Do you know? Yep, yeah, with urine, definitely. And with gout. Gout, and secondarily to that, a lot of arthritic or inflammatory conditions of the articular joints, right? Uric acid is a metabolic byproduct that can accumulate in the joints and cause swelling and inflammation. It quite often accumulates in the extremities, most often seen in the feet. Right? And if you think about someone with weak vasculature, poor circulation, fluid accumulation, elevated uric acid, and gravity, it's all going to kind of sink down and accumulate in those toes. So it causes swelling, incredible pain and tenderness, and swelling and redness. All of those are heat signs, by the way. So we talk in herbal medicine about heat signs. What we're talking in physiology is inflammation and accumulation of metabolic byproducts in those tissues, or cytokine production in those tissues. It's all heat signs, and it's all dealt with pretty much the same way. So uric acid accumulates in the joints, causes gout. Hibiscus is one of the great things for clearing uric acid out of the joints. It's right up there with one of the primary therapies for uric acid is black cherry juice. Black cherry juice, same thing. Whole bunch of organic acids, whole bunch of anthocyanins. And at the same time as you're clearing uric acid, you're also strengthening the tissues so that you have a lower incidence of all of that accumulation, swelling, and pain, because you have greater tissue stability, right? It's very, very clever and lovely the way that happens. So clearing uric acid for arthritis, inflammatory joint conditions specific for gout. Now, one of the things that about this movement of uric acid in the body is because it's moving the uric acid. Uric acid was kind of kept there. It's moving it, clearing it, circulating it through the body. Where do things clear from all of that circulation? It's going to go into the kidneys and be cleared out of the kidneys, right? It's diuretic. You're peeing it out. That is the pharmacokinetics of these compounds. Pharmacokinetics, how they move in the body and how they're cleared out of the body. So the pharmacokinetics are they're cleared out via the kidneys. This is really important in another way because hibiscus can be really good for kidney stones. It can also be bad for kidney stones because there are different types of kidney stones. There are 3 different types of kidney stones that we see. The most common are oxalate stones. Oxalate are the most common stones. There's also another one that begins with S that I don't remember right now. And there's urate stones that are uric acid stones. If you are a person who has a tendency to form urate stones, hibiscus may worsen your kidney stones, because now you're moving uric acid through the body, clearing it out through the kidneys, and it can have actually an increase in stone formation. If you're an oxalate stone former, which is by far the most common form, it can help to clear those out. But different results of different studies happen when we're taking hibiscus, because it depends on what type of language. I can't speak. It depends on what type of stone you form. So it's really important to, hi Hugh, really important to consider that when you're looking at it. And that's why we have conflicting studies.
What about the other one that you forgot the name?
Cysteine?
Nope.
Struvate?
Struvate, thank you. Struvate. Nope, it will not cause it. It's really just the urate forms. So it'll help with the struvate and the oxalate. She has all the world's information in her pocket. You do. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so there's that. Let's see. When we look at cardiovascular disease, huge amounts, there's a lot of research on hibiscus. A lot of information on hibiscus on cardiovascular disease. If we think about the strengthening of vascular walls, totally makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. But also when we think about the antioxidant, I erased it, the antioxidant qualities. That is also a major factor, because when we look at atherosclerosis or deposition of atherosclerotic plaque, or when we look at cholesterol issues, all of those are made worse by oxidative stress. LDL cholesterol is the type of cholesterol that tends to accumulate. LDL cholesterol is the cholesterol that moves from the liver into the bloodstream. The HDL cholesterol moves from the bloodstream to the liver. The HDL cholesterol is considered to be good cholesterol, and LDL is considered to be bad cholesterol. I don't really like that language, because LDL cholesterol has a function in the body. It's just when it's out of balance, it's unhealthy, right? But LDL cholesterol in and of itself is not that damaging. It's when LDL cholesterol becomes oxidized that it becomes potentially problematic. So reducing oxidation of low-density lipoproteins of LDL cholesterol is going to protect it and make it be less problematic. You can have higher levels of LDL cholesterol and be totally fine and healthy. Cholesterol is a really complex and fraught issue. But this is one of the issues. If we're just looking at numbers and we're not paying attention to what is the quality of that cholesterol, we're missing something there, right? So reducing oxidative damage to the cholesterol is one of the big things that we want to look for there too. Hyperlipidemia, we find a regulation of blood pressure by a couple of different functions. It is regulating blood pressure by allowing more elasticity of those vascular walls. If you have vascular walls that are really rigid and you have an elevation of the fluid levels in your body, then you're going to increase the blood pressure, because your vascular walls aren't able just to expand and go, oh, hey, there's more volume. Let's expand to allow for that volume, and then we'll contract when the volume is lower. So that ability to expand and contract, that increased elasticity of tissues, is super important and helpful in blood pressure regulation. The diuresis, getting rid of excess fluid, is super important in blood pressure. So we have two different ways that hibiscus can help with regulation of blood pressure. Both of them really helpful, both of them really good for the rest of the body, and super, super, super safe, and delicious, and tasty, and cheap, and widely available. Super cheap, super widely available. I love hibiscus. Total serum cholesterol levels also drop, triglyceride levels drop. So here again, talking about the diabetes. In diabetes, quite often we have an elevation of triglycerides because the sugars, which are not being burned, the insulin isn't carrying the sugars into the cell to be used as a source of energy. Those sugars, they're not used for energy, so they're converted into triglycerides, and now you have circulating blood fats before they're stored in the body. We have a lowering of triglyceride levels, a lowering of total serum cholesterol levels, a protection against oxidation of cholesterol, and a strengthening of cardiovascular function, with no negative interactions, no herb-drug interactions. It's awesome. Lipid peroxidation, oxidative damage to fats in the body, is really damaging to the brain as well. The brain is majorly fat. It's 60% of the brain is fat. So when we have oxidation of the fats in our body, that can be deposited in brain and have an effect on the brain, have an effect also on the nerve lining. So the nerve lining, the myelin sheath that protects the nerves, is also made up of fat. And that fat that lines our nerves can be replaced by damaged fat, by oxidized fat, and also the liver. The liver is responsible for fat metabolism and clearing, and so when we have a lot of oxidized, damaged fats, that's going to have a negative impact on the liver. So that antioxidant effect of the hibiscus is going to protect those tissues too, the nerves, the brain, the liver. That's pretty major there as well. Boop, ba boop, ba boop. La 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 la. Oxidative stress, cholesterol, liver trauma, urinary tract infections. It can be very helpful for urinary tract infections. Do realize that it is very drying. So if there is a lot of dryness in those tissues, you'd want to combine it with something. What would be a good thing to combine it with?
Water.
Water, absolutely. What herbs would be good to combine it with? Marshmallow, and they're cousins. They're cousins. Throw in some marshmallow or some okra or some nopal, right? Chop up nopal and throw a couple of chunks of nopal in there, and that's super moistening. Also, cheap and widely available. Free, if you go and find nopal grown somewhere. Doop-a-doop-a-doop. So I think we got pretty much everything in there. There are some minerals also in there. Iron, calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. Minerals are in there. Do you think the minerals are highly absorbed from hibiscus? Yes, the answer is yes, because minerals like acidity. Minerals are extracted better in an acid medium. And if you have an herb that you're extracting that's rich in minerals, say raspberry leaf or oat straw or nettles or anything like that, combining it with a hibiscus is automatically going to make the minerals in those herbs be more readily extracted into your tea, because the hibiscus has acidified your tea. All right, little chemistry action here, because we got to. Anytime we're talking about anthocyanins, we have to talk about the fun chemistry stuff you can do with it.
Can I ask you a quick question before we get on that? You were saying combining hibiscus with something else that's high in minerals. What other herb would you recommend that would be high in minerals that would be good for that specific effect?
Horsetail.
Okay.
Horsetail, alfalfa, red clover, nettles, oat straw, raspberry leaf. Other ones? Yeah, am I missing any? That's most of them.
And these are ones that you can mix it with for UTIs.
No, that's for enhancing mineral extraction of
Or
those
enhancing
plants.
mineral.
Yeah. So remember when we were talking about horsetail tea a couple of weeks ago? If you mixed horsetail and the hibiscus, you'd get more of the silica out of the horsetail because of the acidity of the hibiscus. Want some more? Shall I pour before I finish? Would you like more?
Sure. And I'm sorry, horsetail, just a couple more that you were saying.
Horsetail, red clover.
Marshmallow.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Oat straw, nettle. Would you like some more? Yes, puja, nopal. Here, thank you. Would you like some more? Alicia, you didn't get any? Did you get some? Okay. Would you like some more?
Oh, sure, thank you. So marshmallow and cactus are moisturizing?
Yes, they are moistening. All right. All right. So, anthocyanins are reactive. Oh, I forgot to do those. Would you send those around?
Yeah.
This is an elixir that I made that's just super yummy, which is a cacao hibiscus elixir. So it is cacao, hibiscus, and rose hips, and then alcohol. It does have alcohol in it, so if you don't do alcohol, you just let this one go by. But I really love the combination of cacao and hibiscus together. It's super, super delicious. Anthocyanins are reactive to changes in pH. So when it is more acidic, it is red. When it's alkaline, it is blue. So you can change the color of anthocyanin-rich plants by changing the pH. So what would you think is the pH of this plant? Do you think that it's more alkaline or more acid? Acid, yeah, because it's red. But if I throw our favorite alkalinizing compound, baking soda, in here, isn't that cool?
Would you add baking soda?
Baking soda, yeah. Yeah. So yep, it turns blue. If I put some vinegar in here, I could turn it red, and I could toggle back and forth between red, blue, just by changing the pH. By the way, butterfly pea flower is a blue tea. It's given all sorts of magical uses. Butterfly pea flower is just anthocyanins in an alkaline plant, and they're just blue. That's all. There's nothing there that really makes it cost so darned much. Or...
You know, when I'm cleaning my jars of hibiscus, just in the water, it turns purple or blue in the sink.
That's right, because we have hard water, and hard water has more minerals in it, and minerals are alkaline. So yes, when you rinse out your hibiscus or anything that's red in there, yeah, it'll turn blue in the sink because of the minerals in the water. Exactly. And plants, one of the best known plants that is rich in anthocyanins in the flowers is, just left my brain. What is the... It was there until I started that sentence, and then it left.
What's the sentence again?
The flowers that are blue, but then if you change the pH of the soil, they turn pink. They are...
Oh, we did this, I think, a while ago.
No.
One of you has to know that. Oh my God. That's just driving me up.
Yarrow?
No. Oh,
You're able to pink, but it's not.
yeah. No, it's not a medicinal. Hydrangea, Missy, thank you very. Hi, Missy, mwah. And Nan, hi, Nan, mwah. Hydrangea, thank you. Hydrangea, yeah.
Colors?
You change the pH of the soil, and the blooms will change from pink to blue. No, it's cool because chemistry. You should do that.
That would be so cool.
I think you should do that.
This summer we're gonna be blue. Next summer we're gonna.
That's right. Now, we have alkaline soil. It's really hard to acidify our soil. I mean, you can, but it's really hard to acidify soil. Alrighty. You asked about doses. I have to say, I really struggle with dosage issues because the dosage depends on the person and how many other anthocyanins are you getting from other sources and why are you taking it. So really the dosages, take a whole bunch of it. Take a whole bunch. Look for anthocyanins in your diet and just eat anthocyanins, eat red, blue, purple colored things. And if you're not eating a lot of them in your diet, if you're not getting a lot of fruits and vegetables that way, sure, have a cup of hibiscus tea, have a couple of cups of hibiscus tea. But if you're eating blueberries and elderberries and acai berries and red cabbage and roses and all of that.
Are we completely undermining all of the benefits of all these anthocyanins by adding a ton of sugar to?
No, you are not undermining the effects of the anthocyanins by adding sugar. There are negative effects. The negative effects of sugar are separate from that. You're still going to have the effects of the anthocyanin, but you're also going to have increased inflammation from the sugar.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? So you might have a net a net neutral effect, right? The anthocyanins are still going to do what they do. They're going to protect you from all of that sugar that you're, but the sugar is going to do what it does too.
So
That's
the better
exactly
to
right.
use honey? Or
It's
will it
better
be
to
like
not
a
use
bag?
sugar.
With hibiscus, we have one mix that we use with dried fruit, and it takes out kind of the bitterness of this, or not bitterness, but like the sourness, and it really balances well.
Oh,
So
and
maybe
dried
something
fruit
to
is a
try,
great
just
idea with
dried
that.
fruit in with it.
That's
for
a
your donut.
wonderful
Yeah.
idea. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. And then you can nibble on the fruit that's all plumped up from there. There you go.
This is already a little sweet.
There's a little bit of sweetness along with it. I don't mind it unsweetened. So often we just get, you get Jamaica at the Mexican restaurant when you go because it's all yummy and because it's what you get. But it's so much sugar in Jamaica. There's so much. So having it unsweetened is a nice thing. It makes an awesome glyceride. It makes an awesome infused honey. It makes an awesome syrup. All of those, sweet issues. But yeah, they are lovely there. All right. Any other questions?
No, but I have a comment. The tincture is awesome.
Yes.
The
Tincture?
combination, awesome.
Oh, the cacao and hibiscus. Isn't that a lovely, delicious thing?
That would be a great chocolate bar, though. With like chunks of it.
Oh my God,
Because you
stop
could
it.
do the candied. You can get the candied hibiscus flowers.
Oh, yeah.
Are so good. We need to have a chocolate making thing. Yeah, chopping up hibiscus in there. It would be just like, dried cherries in there. And dried cherries. Also, cherries are a really, and we're going into cherry season. It's cherry season coming up. Anthocyanins, all over the anthocyanins. If you get the dark ones, dark colors, dark pigments are what we want to look for. The darker, the better. Pale, little anemic berries. You have the yellow berries. I mean, those are yummy. The rainier berries, they're yummy, the little pale ones. But if you have a choice between a pale one and dark one, you always get the darker ones because that's going to give you more
But I
goodness.
noticed the lighter red cherries taste watered down.
Yeah. Well, you've been tasting anthocyanins here, so you can taste kind of that barnyard sour, funky. Yeah, and you get sort of that when you have those really, really dark cherries. And so, they're going to be sweet. The sweet is going to be there, but you're not going to get that complexity of flavor because the chemistry is affecting the flavor too, because they do.
The elixir combination would make for a really good mezcal.
Oh, with mezcal. It would be. We actually were making, at last year's, I take my apprentices out for a camping trip. And we were around the fire at night. We were drinking Jamaica with mezcal.
Oh, wow.
It's a very, very fine combination. We weren't doing cacao, so I think we'll have to do the chocolate in there too this time.
Yeah, the next step.
There you go. All right, I don't remember what next week's plant is, but it's there somewhere. Let me look.
I'll tell you.
Oh, thank you. It's there is a plant next. Mugwort? Ooh, mugwort. Is it mugwort?
I mean, we're supposed to be at lemongrass.
I know. We already discussed that. We're not doing lemongrass. Mugwort. So we will have mugwort next week. We'll be looking at the difference between the typical mugwort, European mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris, and our native mugwort, Artemisia douglassiana, which has a significant difference. They're used somewhat interchangeably, but they are also significantly different. I do not, just to be super clear, I do not wildcraft native plants. I don't think that's appropriate in Los Angeles. I grow California native plants, and so the mugwort that I use as native mugwort is grown in my garden. But I'll bring a whole bunch, and people can take home because mugwort just grows out of control. So I've got lots of fresh mugwort to play with, and then we'll use the dried mugwort for tea. So see you next week for... Yes, Zaida, yes, you can use the mark to make hibiscus tacos. Yes, exactly, the hibiscus tacos. Thank you. All right, see you next week.